I wrote that for him for our wedding without ChatGPT.
A technologist, a priest, a philosopher, and a couple of artists walked into a bar. This bar, this is where you find yourself tonight. Isn't that exciting? Welcome to Politics of a Pub, what AI means for humanity, art, and artists. A little while ago, I was reading a book, which was written by a real-life author. His name is Robert Shaw. And he says, cultures, communities, mothers, sons, lovers get lost in the woods and sometimes have to make monstrous bargains to get out alive. Isn't the vast technological domain that we're calling AI exciting? Isn't it daunting? There could be treasures in these woods. There could be mysteries, there could be monsters, but doesn't it feel like we're walking into the woods? It's an exciting time. So I've been wondering about this. What's going to become of our culture and our communities and our mothers and sons in a future with AI? What's going to happen when our principles are replaced with prompts and our creativity is replaced with content? I'm being hyperbolic. We're at the pub. This is replaced to be hyperbolic. But it's all happening so quickly, isn't it? When I was in high school, we started watching a film called An Inconvenient Truth. And the big issue was climate change. And now I'm hearing that we're on the step of the next industrial revolution. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? It could even be the next silicon-based Cambrian revolution, a new life form. Isn't that amazing? The time that we're alive. Incredible. Into the woods. Now, I've been paying attention to this discussion, and I'm hearing people talk about the tech itself, and the economy itself, and the medical revolutions that can be brought around by AI, and it's all thrilling. But I live in Fremantle, the city of artists, and so I'm biased here, as you can tell from my wife. But tonight we're going to be talking about AI, humanity, art, and artists. Are you excited? Yeah. I'm excited. So I'm just going to let you know what tonight is not about. Okay? Tonight is not about macro matters to do with the far distant future, nor is it about microchips, which are so small that you can't even see them with the naked eye. Instead, tonight is about what AI means for us, the human, the spark, the creative, and the culture and industries that surround them. Now, when I was in university, everybody would groan when somebody would ask the question, what is art? You learn very quickly it's a faux pas to ask that question, but I think that question is seeing a re-emergence. I think it's a fruit on the vine of a broader question, what does it mean to be human? These questions, they're perennial, they're not evergreen. They come with seasons, and 'tis the season to discuss this. And so I invite you to participate in the conversation. Now, before we begin, my name is Christian Mauri, and this is Robert Doves. We're the Fremantle Network. If you're coming back, welcome back. It's lovely to have you. And if you're new, it's lovely to meet you. I already see people making friends, which is wonderful. I want to acknowledge the original custodians of this land, the Wajak people. It's not lost on me how lucky I am to be here. And I also want to acknowledge the local hotel and Ash. I have events everywhere. These guys are the best. They're the most hospitable. The local hotel is a wonderful place. Now, here's what to expect. We have 5 speakers. They get 6 minutes each. At 5 minutes, I'm going to tap this bottle once. At 6 minutes, I'm going to make it sing, and I'm not going to make it stop singing until you're all applauding. So can you work with me here? will be percussionists. It'll be fun. Once we've done that, we're going to have a break. I want you to chat with one another, right? Make new friends. Don't all rush the bar at the same time because the staff can't handle it, okay? Then we're going to come back for a Q&A, a discussion where you get to say what you're thinking, and anybody in the room, speakers included, can respond. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, before I introduce the first speaker, I want to acknowledge Councillor Pip Slaughter, who I saw earlier. She might be at the bar. Are there any other members of Fremantle Council here tonight? They might be hiding, they're a little bit shy. If you are here, thank you for coming. All right, to wit, our first speaker is Jeroen van Dalen. Jeroen is the founder and director of the Australian Institute for Transformation and AI. We're going to call it AITAI from now on. This is based in St. Catherine's College. He's also the managing director of Integral Development, which has worked on leadership with Australian organisations since 2003. So he's got his finger on the pulse. We're very, very lucky to have him here tonight. At AITAI, he researches how Western Australian organisations are actually adopting AI. Not the hype, but what they're actually doing, what it looks like. The question that comes up most often in his work are the human questions, about jobs, about work, and what we think people are for. He's Dutch, he's based in Perth, and he still finds the human component to be the most interesting part of his job. Please welcome Jeroen.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me. I was a tad nervous coming here, to be honest. My partner is from Frio, and she was like, "Hey, you're pretty pro AI, hey?" And I was like, "Yeah." It's like, don't think that will be your audience tonight. And I think that's exactly why I want to be here. I'll explain in a second why, but I just kind of want to know a little bit about you before I tell a bit about me. And who here thinks AI is just plain evil, bad, dot, end of story? Please raise your hand. Yeah. Who here kind of loves AI, uses it regularly, thinks it's pretty cool? Raise your hand, please. Who here is kind of in the middle, not sure yet, has some good things, has some bad things, still finding my way? Not so bad, also right, it's nice. And so, yeah, I'm Dutch. I've been in the AI kind of space as an entrepreneur for about 10 years. So I know the technology quite deeply from a technology perspective. I've had teams building with it. I've had researchers working for me. And currently I run an AI institute. And why did I start this institute? Because I'm worried about AI. I am worried kind of in two opposing ways. My first worry is that if we adopt this too fast, too poorly, too fast, without thinking about it, we will get ourselves into all sorts of problems. Think about security, think about privacy, IP. Is it trained on data from artists? We have to really think deeply about the things we do not want. But fear and anger can also lead us to stop thinking, put our head in the sand, and just say, no, we don't want that. But we live in a global world where other countries and some companies will be adopting it. So we also have to think about, okay, what parts do we want and how do we deal with that? And so my job is to talk to a lot of people about AI. I speak to artists. I was just in the US, just talked to AI engineers. There was an art conference of a whole lot of artists. Speak to politicians, CEOs, everyone that wants to talk about AI, and I try to understand a few things. One, what are you most excited about? What do you hope this technology can do for you? And what are you worried about? What do you really want not to happen? And so I hope that together we can start forming a vision of what we want from this technology. And that vision includes the things we don't want, the things we need to protect, but also the things that maybe don't work so well, or we have options to improve. To give me an example, I get a lot of requests from not-for-profits that say, we're spending about a third of our time doing admin, complying with grants, etc. Can you help us free up this time so we can spend the time doing actually the things we're meant to do? So I think this technology is dual use. And I hope to learn a lot from you, get interesting questions, and maybe, hopefully, get some questions where I know answers to. And how long do I have left?
All the time for what?
I only got to my first bullet, so no. So I've got a team of researchers, and I asked them, can you say anything about job data and arts? Job data is one of the big fears in Australia. 2-3 kind of cool data points. One, 80% of Australian news articles about jobs and AI is negative. That's the most negative of any country we've measured. Interesting. So is that then accurate, or might Australians get then a biased view of what's happening? I don't know the answer to that, but it's a cool question to think about. Then onto the Minderoo Foundation did a recent study here in Western Australia and asked, what is the biggest fear about AI? And it was jobs for most people. And then IP misuse secondly. So we looked at the job data, and this is really early, we haven't published this yet, and so caveats. But we looked at job data in the arts, and we looked at 13 occupations, and 18 occupations, and of those, 13 have grown more than the average job since ChatGPT got launched. So that's an interesting data point. I thought those jobs would have gone down. And this says nothing yet. Hey, this can change in 3 years, in 5 years. But I thought it was interesting. So, but a handful of jobs went down. So the jobs that went down were graphics and web design fell by 24%, job ads. But guess which jobs grew the most? And this was really surprising to me. Authors and editors, journalists and writers. Cool, right?
Yeah.
Totally surprised to me. And what I find really interesting is we are trying to hire copywriters for our institute. Two cool data points. One, it's really hard to find copywriters at the moment, so my intuition aligns with this. And more interesting, no one wants to work for a pro AI institute. And on that note, thank you for being here. Lots of people.
So I pay attention to this. That's the closest anybody's gotten to being bang on time for 5 years. That's 47 past it. Now, before I continue, I see quite a few people standing up. Is anybody sitting next to an empty chair right now? We have an empty chair down here. Any other empty chairs around? There's an empty chair over there as well, if you'd like a seat. Our next speaker is Dr. Jacqueline Boaks. So Jacqueline is the curriculum lead with Curtin Centre for Applied Ethics and Philosopher-in-Residence at the WA Data Science Innovation Hub. She is the Vice President of the Australian Association of Professional and Applied Ethics, Editor of Research and Ethical Issues in Organisations, founder of the WA Ethics Outside Philosophy Group, co-editor of Leadership and Ethics for Bloomsbury, and a member of the editorial board for the journal Philosophy of Management by Springer. Her most recent research addresses the question of dirty hands in leadership and the impact of artificial intelligence in corporate social responsibility, decision-making in organizations. She's regularly featured in the media on ethics and artificial intelligence, leadership, and business ethics. And I called her up yesterday just to see if she was ready, and she was like, have I missed it? Am I supposed to be there? Which was just delightful. Please welcome Jackie.
Thank you. Yes, I was absolutely paranoid that you were saying, where are you? Yes, thank you so much. This is a delightful venue. Yes, so I am a moral philosopher who thinks about artificial intelligence and leadership and ethics. So naturally, when I sat down a few days ago to think, what do I have to say about that? I thought, should I say what Claude has to say? No, I absolutely do not want to do that. And I think, what got me thinking, what's wrong with that in terms of being human, in terms of a sense of meaning and what we think about the arts and art and being human? What is so absolutely hostile to the idea of sitting down and writing and thinking and asking, what does ChatGPT have to say? And the more I've been thinking about it, the reason that I think that is such a hostile way in is that in terms of what it means to be human, a large language model can give us the illusion that we can have a kind of generic, overall, perfect view from nowhere, right? This kind of bland view. And I've been discussing with other philosophers or other thinkers about AI at Curtin, this idea of preference collapse, right? The idea that there is the illusion of the view from nowhere, the bland preference collapse, the one-size view. So what's the opposite of that? What is it to be human? Well, I think when you're a philosopher, the other alternative is you go back to what the ancient Greeks had to say. And the ancient Greeks, Aristotle and Plato took really different views on what art is and what it means to be human. Plato thought, well, he was entirely hostile to art. He thought it was a distraction for the things we should be doing. Aristotle thought that art was for moral education. But what I take from them is the idea that everything we do, every art and inquiry, aims at a good. There's something we try to get out of what we're doing. It's for a purpose. And I really think that what AI gives us a chance to do when it comes to art, when it comes to everything we do as humans, is step back and think, not so much, how do we want to regulate the AI? Is the AI good or bad? But what are we trying to get out of this as humans? And then can the AI help? Does it have a place there or not? So I go back, for example, to what is the point of art? What are we doing? And for me as a philosopher, as a moral philosopher, it is very close to what are we trying to achieve when it comes to ethics? And I go back to examples where we have students ask about things like, imagine I'm working in an organisation and I have a colleague who's had a bereavement and I want to send them the perfect email to offer them my condolences. Should I use ChatGPT for that? And what is really hard but important, I think, for us all to navigate as humans and for us to try and explain to students is that the point of ethics, for example, just as the point of art, is not actually getting the answers right. It's not writing the perfect email. The point of ethics, the point of art, what it means to be human is in the process, what it does for us as humans. So there's a lovely quote from Kurt Vonnegut who says that, look, he will never, ever not help someone who's trying to become a good writer. Not because they might write the perfect novel, but because developing the skill of writing and thinking makes them themselves more graceful. It's something that we do as humans. And I think ethics is very much the same thing. So any of you that have done some moral philosophy at university would have come across the trolley problems, right? Do you flick the switch? Do you push the giant off the bridge? And AI at the moment is very focused on the alignment problem. How do we align AI so that it gets the ethical answers right? And I think the ethical answers matter. They absolutely do. I'm obliged to say that as someone who's employed to do moral philosophy. But the point of philosophy and the point of ethics is not getting the answers right. There's no one magic right answer to the trolley problem and then you solve for ethics and you go on and do something else. There's no one magic outcome for art. The point is, what does it do to us as humans? What kind of intellectual agency do we need to develop? And my really deeply held belief is that the point of ethics and what it gives us as humans, the process, is it helps us become thinking, reasoning, ethical people. In the same way that doing art, creating art, is part of what it is to be human. It doesn't matter if it's going to become the next best-selling novel or if it's going to become the Mona Lisa. To a certain extent, the Mona Lisa is not the point of art, right? It's who are we when we're creating art? Who are we when we're doing ethics? So one of the examples that we sometimes ask, the example of the condolence email. Should I write the perfect condolence email using Claude? My really strong belief is that the point there is not about the perfect email. The point when you've suffered a devastating loss and I come to you and I'm stuck for words and I don't know what to say, me offering that inarticulateness, me offering myself being lost for words and not having the perfect words for you, That's what I'm doing when I'm offering you my condolences. It would be absolutely glib to think I could come up with the perfect words or the perfect artwork that make you feel better. The point is me acknowledging, wow, all of those times when I have, say, suffered a loss, you know, when you have that experience and you look around and you realise for other people, this is just a normal Tuesday and it's the worst day of your life. Part of what I'm doing in ethics is realising, what is it to be someone who realises that when I'm having a normal Tuesday, someone else might be having the worst day of their life? How do I become that kind of person? So to me, that is the point of ethics. That's what we're doing when we're doing ethics. That's the becoming human. And that's the art and the experience of becoming human. And the key for me is to remember, what is the purpose? What is the purpose of art? What is the purpose of ethics? It's not the Mona Lisa. It's not the perfect email. It's becoming someone and being someone for whom art and beauty, ethics, critical thinking are really, really important. Thank you.
That was 5:45. What are we going to do with all these extra seconds we're scoring? How many AI agents does it take to change a light bulb? Wow, great question. You're so courageous for asking. Kaylene Mauri is a digital illustrator, writer, jazz singer, and singing teacher. In terms of being a singing teacher, one of the coolest things I've ever heard her say is she'll meet a high school student who will be the shyest girl or boy at the start of the year. And by the end of the year, they'll be jazz scatting in front of the entire school. Isn't that an accomplishment? Could you imagine that being part of your job? It's so admirable. She performs with a handful of jazz bands across Perth and also writes and illustrates a web novel series called Springtide Rebellion. At one point, she had 30,000 weekly readers, which can be read on Webtoon and Wattpad. As a long-time tech enthusiast, Kaylene used to be genuinely excited about the potential of future technologies. She's a Trekkie through and through, big Star Trek fan. But recent developments have seen her become increasingly disillusioned with how they are being developed and deployed. Please welcome Kaylene Mauri.
Thank you. Let me tell you a lie that I once believed. The lie is this, that AI is a miracle cure for mundane work, that it will do all the paper-pushing, bureaucratic nonsense for us, ushering in a post-work utopia where we all have boundless time to pursue our interests, to learn, to write, to make art, to make music. Why is this a lie? Because beyond the obvious fact that the ultra-wealthy are never going to share their wealth so the rest of us can afford not to work, I could just end the speech there. I've seen what generative AI is doing to the arts. It's a catastrophe. It's replacing creatives, it's stealing our livelihoods, and it's driving us back into mundane work for the sake of survival. And to be clear, I'm speaking specifically on generative AI here. There are other purposes for this technology. Those, I digress, they're for a different topic. First, to make art. I'm a digital illustrator. I've been posting my art on the internet since I was about 15 years old, picking up occasional paid work, drawing cute little anime cartoon versions of people's pets or their kids or their Dungeons and Dragons character. I draw and sell little keychains and stickers, things like that, and I'm illustrating my own sci-fi novellas. It's a hobby for me, but for many artists, it's their entire living. Enter AI. Want to know how AI can generate an image? Because it sucked up the sum total of human creative output on the internet. Everything I have ever shared online is now part of a data set. I know this because the platforms I used to share my work on have admitted it. They've bragged about it. I didn't get paid for this. I didn't consent to this, and I can't opt out. Those people who used to pay real artists to draw their pets and their kids and their fantasy characters, they can generate those using AI now. My stickers and keychains, which I used to sell on Etsy, they now compete with a flood of AI-generated slop to the point that I just shut the shop down. Professional illustrators and graphic designers have seen their work dry up, all because the billionaires behind generative AI stole what we shared for free and then used that stolen data to steal our livelihoods as well. Second, to write. Writers are suffering from the same suite of problems that visual artists are. Journalists compete with machines which can churn out an article in 10 seconds. Screenwriters are being encouraged by their corporate overlords to use AI to speed up the writing process. Indie authors now compete with AI-generated novel-length stories that have slopped all over the Kindle bookstore. You can even find books with their AI prompts still left in the text by accident. There have been short story competitions which have handed first place to stories that are widely suspected to be AI written. And even traditional publishing has been caught up in the mess, with examples like the novel Shy Girl being littered with suspiciously AI-sounding passages. One horrifying consequence of AI being used for writing is that AI hallucinates, and this is specifically concerning regarding news and journalism. Did you know that you can use glue to help the cheese not slide off a pizza? Did you know that geologists recommend eating one small rock a day? Now, these sound like pretty harmless examples, so long as you don't actually try them. Please don't. But these kinds of hallucinations can also show up in, let's say, the AI-generated news article about politics that your mum just shared with you over Facebook. Rather more concerning there, don't you think? Third, I had to cut the part about music, sorry. You can ask me that in question time though, for time's sake. Finally, to learn. Now, to learn is the most depressing part. AI discourages people from learning new skills. Something that teachers often hear from their students now is, why should I learn how to do this when AI can do it for me? One very sad example I've seen online recently was a young illustrator who got caught out using AI to polish her rough work to a more professional level so she could sell it. She'd feed her drawings into the AI and it would spit out a slightly better, more polished version. But her own work was genuinely good. It had potential. It wasn't professional, not yet. But if she knuckled down and practiced for a few years, she'd be that good. But she's not going to be that good, because instead she's reduced her own talent to a mere prompt. And she'll never improve beyond that point unless she puts in actual work. It's like watching a person saw off their own potential at the ankles. What I notice as a singing teacher is similar. It's kids losing their resilience to tackle challenging tasks, to put in the work. In order to get good at something, anything in the arts, you got to spend a really long time being bad at it. Genuinely bad at it. Eventually, after enough hard work and practice, and this takes years, you get pretty good. Add in a few more years of even harder hard work and practice, and you become excellent. AI can't sing for you, but it can erode your patience. It can lead you subtly to expect instant results. And I'm seeing so many students with great potential just drop out because they don't want to practice and they don't immediately sound like Taylor Swift after one term of lessons. There are long-term issues with this. Every time we write, every time we think through a problem, every time we practice something intricate and difficult, we're exercising our brain, keeping those neurons pulsing. There's a reason neurologists advise elderly people to keep on learning new skills. It helps to slow cognitive decline. And cognitive decline, by the way, happens post the age of about 25. We're all in it. Kids are now using AI to write their English assignments. They're using it to draw pictures for them. They're using it to write stories. They're using it to do their thinking for them, instead of learning how to properly use their own minds and to learn. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I can't see much long-term good coming from that. And those kids who do put in the work, they're watching their dream careers crumble before their eyes. And so, to survive, they pick a different career. And because they can't dedicate their working life to their craft, they will never achieve their full artistic potential. Because the reality is, there is a big difference in skill and execution between a hobbyist who can only create in their spare time and a professional who can dedicate every day of their life to their craft. The sum total of human creativity is being chewed up and spat out as slop, heating our planet and decimating our water supplies with every prompt. So what do? Aside from campaigning for anti-AI copyright law, what you guys can do is simple. Reject it. Reject it. Don't use it. Make your own art, write your own emails, sing out of tune, support local artists, support indie authors, and treat the AI like it's radioactive. This bubble will pop, by the way. Google, Meta, Anthropic, they are burning billions of dollars every year, and the only companies making a profit on this are the ones selling the hardware, selling shovels in a gold rush. So reject it. Wait it out. AI is only data, and data can only look back. Art looks forward. Be the artist.
Thank you.
I am so glad that Jacqueline finished early so I didn't have to ring the bowl on my wife. We have a priest here. I think he'd say that that's a sin to time out your wife, right? Now, on the point of writing, does anybody here still have the essays that you wrote when you were in university? Yeah. So something that's really exciting that I noticed recently, throughout my 20s, I couldn't read those essays. It was too humiliating, right? But recently I've taken out late teen Christian's essays, and he knew something that I had forgotten. That young man, he knew something that I had forgotten. It was beautiful to see. I reckon if you were going to read your writing from when you were younger, your young version probably knew something that you'd forgotten as well. Isn't that lovely?
What did he know?
Speak to me after the actual. I want to answer that so bad, but it would be too risky. He tried writing love poetry, which means that he had the courage to be vulnerable. If I was to try to write love poetry now, I am too much a preemptive critic of my own work. Does anybody relate to this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Joanna Brown. Joanna is a Fremantle-based public artist and designer whose work can be found in festivals and public spaces across Western Australia. With a practice spanning more than 20 years, she joins the panel as a working artist to share her reflections on AI, creativity, and what it means to make art in a changing landscape. Please welcome Joanna Brown.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jo, and I wonder how I get myself into these things. But in this instance, I do know how I got myself into it because I was Rainy Daying at the pub to Robbie Lane about 3 weeks ago about something that I had just gone through. So one of the things I do is a series of festival posters for Nannup Music Festival, which I've done for about 13 years. And about halfway through the process of working on it, I realised that I'm working in a slightly different way, and I'm trying to make it look like I haven't used AI. Okay, so then I have a little panic, and then I go, what if my work just looks like AI anyway? Because I use a lot of symmetry, I use a lot of repetition, and I use a lot of pattern making. So I'm deliberately leaving rough edges. I'm trying to prove that a human made it. And then, in amongst that panic, I suddenly realised that my body of work predates AI. So I've got a body of work behind me that proves that this wasn't born of AI. And it made me think, that made me reclaim my process. And it made me think, what if you're starting your career now? How do you reclaim your process if you have not had any independence of mind to develop it? And how will we ever know how something was made ever again? Okay, so my creative process is messy. It's not predictable. There's lots of dead ends. And I can allow myself maybe 5 hours to work on something if I'm working to a brief and I go, this is where the hourly rate comes in and I'm going to make some money. And at the end of that 5 hours, I might have a screen full of disconnected ideas and nothing's working and nothing's speaking to anything else. So what I've learned over my career is that I have to stick with it. That it's the sticking with it that makes the work come. I'm losing myself a little bit. But so I stick with the process and I learn that making art is mostly about being lost. And that from that process, after many years of doing that, I develop a style. And if you're lucky, you have a style that people might recognise and that becomes something that is uniquely yours. And that's born of many years of working on something. Okay, so AI arrives. I felt like I was a little late to the party, but maybe I'm not, people in this room. I have always been a techno-curious, so I'm not shy of exploring things. I've used digital devices to make my work for a while. I draw with Apple pencils, I like drawing with light, I like the digital realm. So AI arrives. So I think initially I started to muck around with it. I was quite late to realise that you could upload an image and that AI could look at it. I didn't actually realise that you could even upload an image to AI. So I eventually, I think in the process of a public art application, I uploaded a finished design, and I uploaded the public design brief, and bing bang bong, I asked it, what did it think? Had I achieved the goals? I asked it to dialogue with me. So I have danced with the devil, and I have played with it. So what I discovered amongst it looking at images is that it becomes a little bit like, I did my master's in art therapy, and one of the premises of art therapy is that you have an artwork, you have the artist, and you have a third independent body. And then it's a three-way relationship between the image and the artist and the therapist. And that there's something about the hand doesn't lie, and there is hidden messages in artwork that can be explained and worked through with in relationship. In a therapeutic sense, obviously, that's a therapist. So I think that I got interested in the fact that I could dialogue with AI about my artwork. So then I started to keep on playing with it. And after a little while, I'm realising that it's starting to develop in the way that AI does. It starts to know my visual language. I start to play with it. So I'm working in ceramics, and I would like to move those ceramics into larger scale 3D things. So in terms of rendering, it's incredibly useful. So I uploaded an image of ceramics. I said, make this 3 meters tall and out of concrete. Oh my God. So it's a little bit maddening because it doesn't exist, but I totally loved it. So I was using it as a tool to visualize my work. Pandora's box. Pandora's box has been opened. Returning to the Nanup poster, I was conflicted. Having seen that AI could potentially imitate my style in a way that it didn't really need me to do, to be involved, I thought I didn't want this to be the point at which, now that I had been playing with it, people said, oh, now we can see this is where she started working with AI. And my creative process was changed. So, the questions that arose were about my creative process, and did I want to lose? I could see the potential for myself to franchise myself, that I could franchise myself to make things. So, boiling it down, it was a real dilemma, and I thought that this is easy and it is effortless. But my questions were about whether I wanted to lose the struggle. Did I value efficiency, or did I value process? So I realised I wasn't protecting my style, I was protecting my process of making art. So if AI copies style, and AI can even copy imperfections, so AI can do me better than me, potentially, but my art's not perfect, so is that what makes it human? But AI can also copy imperfection. You could easily say, leave some flaws in this so that this would look authentic. So other traditional crafts are harder to work with, like ceramics and various things, but I think further down the line you wouldn't be able to pick those anyway, either, from the fake thing. So it became about bodies in a room for me. I realised that the only way you would ever know that an art piece was real and had been made 100% by humans was potentially in this world, that you'd have to be in the room when the artwork was made. I mean, a painting, yes, but the way that most of us look at paintings is on screens, so we're removed from the artwork itself, which means that it is a secondary step away from a painting. They become digital anyways. So I kind of feel like the genie's out of the bottle for all of us. I don't think we're going to be able to stuff it back. I felt like my compass stopped working for a minute, and AI disrupted my understanding of my own practice, and that's why I was ranting in the pub But I've just got one more thing. I just want to know whether the AI will devalue my work or increase its value. Will human-made art become more valuable in the future, or will it decrease? If we can delineate between the two, will we end up with human-made art becoming more valuable? Obviously, I don't have any answers. I've only got questions. Humans have always loved making things. We're not going to lose that. Life problems, like design problems, are the struggles that make a meaningful life, and I wasn't willing to give that up, and I don't think that any of us are, but that the finished object is only part of the story. And I actually don't think I ended up learning about AI. I think this is about process, and AI just forced me to know what my process was.
You know, Joanna, as we were talking about the process, I just had an image in my head. You know that scene in the Titanic where Rose is like, paint me like one of your French girls? Could you imagine if it just like generates an image of her? Nowhere near as romantic. Okay, our final speaker is Father Ernest Lennon. So in the middle of Fremantle, in Waddylock Court, also known as King's Square, is the beautiful and majestic St. John's Anglican Church. And the rector of that church is a man by the name of Ernest. Ernest is always pointing to people to the bigger ideas of the world and a better version of themselves. He read philosophy at the National University of Ireland, where he wrote his thesis on Derrida and Augustine. Imagine a priest writing a thesis on Derrida. Isn't that exciting? Scandalous. Did you know that Fremantle has a history of having extremely scandalous priests for their intellectual curiosities? After that, he read theology at Oxford University, where he prepared for the priesthood. When he's not ministering, he's on a quest to find the best pizza in the Paris. He has a weakness for books, but never has enough time to enjoy them. And I'll just add, Fremantle has a real shortage of drummers at the moment, and he won't tell you this himself, but he plays the drums. So if you're looking for a drummer, Father Ernest might be your man. Please welcome Ernest Lennon.
Thank you very much, Christian. I guess they say the prophet of doom to the end. I want to be a little bit skeptical about AI, not because it's artificial, but because I don't think it's intelligent. And I think it actually does something to human intelligence. Now, I guess if you read Marx will tell you that AI is a sort of a fetish. We take something, we create something, we forget that we made it, we are overawed by its power. That's also what the Hebrew scriptures call idolatry. We worship this thing. We think it's going to solve all our problems. But actually, all it's doing is making us stupider. And so this is my beef with AI. And essentially it's because AI works on a binary system. It can be super fast, it can be super impressive, it can do amazing things, but we run the risk of beginning to think that our minds work in the same way. And a lot of analytic philosophy has kind of convinced us that really our minds are just machines, right? You've heard that idea before. And yet what we've already heard tonight from other speakers on the panel is that our mind is so much more. There's so much more about our knowledge that's relational, that's physical, that's embodied. Now, I guess if we think about the way we talk about AI, we talk about computer learning. That's not the case at all. AI can build up thousands and thousands of pieces of data, can work through them very fastly, but is that really intelligence? If you did that, would you have learned anything? If you knew 1,000 facts about riding a bicycle, would that mean you could actually ride it? I don't think so. And here's one of the dangers. We are misled by language, of course. And when I thought about this, I thought, who talks about misleading us through language? And of course it's Wittgenstein. Not maybe as useful as some of the ancient philosophers, but Wittgenstein talks about a form of life. And here's where AI fails in terms of, its intelligence again. Look at our context right now. We are in a social setting, we are in a bar. There's a certain etiquette. There's a certain way that we behave in this place. There's a certain sense that we make about how we order drinks, how we share things, whose round it is. AI can't understand any of that. It might be able to recommend the best bar in Fremantle. It might tell you the sorts of things that people do when they go to bars. But it could not create this situation here tonight. And I listed a few of these things about where I thought actually AI can mislead us. And these are distinctly human things. Okay, let's pick a few words out. You can see I didn't use AI to create this. It's all over the place. Pen and paper, old school, eh? I can't find them. The word pain. And for you to understand what the word pain means, it's not just to know the definition of it. Pain is to understand the behavior that goes around that. It's to understand something about care, something about injury, something about vulnerability, something about sympathy, something about the human body. So much more than just a simple definition. Take another word, promise. Notice how they're getting more theological. Promise. It's not merely generating sentences that contain the word promise. It's understanding commitment, trust, future action, disappointment, accountability, social norms. They're all tied up with how we understand that term. And here's the most theological, perhaps, death. Death isn't just biological cessation. It's belonging to a form of life, and that's Wittgensteinism, a form of life in which mortality matters, okay? And mortality will never matter to AI, but it matters to us, because we are formed in a social context. We're formed by language. So AI will always be fundamentally different from us. My worry is that we will start trying to be more like AI. And this is where the artistic worries come in. This is where we worry about how creative we can be, because we will lose that. When we start to think that we are just fancy computers, we begin to lose a bigger narrative that surrounds what human life is about. Now, of course, for me, as a priest in Fremantle, that narrative is the Christian story. It's a Christian story that actually foregrounds what it means to be human. Why? Because God himself chooses to become a human being. This is something we have to strive to attain and something we have to achieve. But if you read a philosopher like Joanna, he talks about how the distinctive mark of a human being is no longer that we can reason or that we can use language, but that we can hesitate. And actually we can withhold from doing things. And Agamben points out that the push of AI is to make us ever more kind of complete, to finish things quickly, to be efficient, to become productive rather than human. And so I think it's really worthwhile for us to stop and think about what our humanity entails. And if it means that we have to be able sometimes to say, I'm not going to do that, then this is the mark that makes us different from AI. So let's not abandon what it means to be human. Let's not give up our intelligence in order to become more like a machine. Let's strive to stop human stupidity by being a little bit more concerned for artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Fantastic. I think you're right. I think to be human, or at least humane, requires effort. You have to apply yourself from time to time. Most definitely. If anybody is interested in chatting more with Ernest, maybe not around the drums, you can find him at St. John's Anglican Church in Fremantle. Now, we're going to take a break, but I've got a favour to ask you, please. Look how many of you there are. There's not very many staff here. Here is an opportunity. If you buy a friend a drink, you're not just doing them a favour, but you're doing the staff a favour as well, because the line is smaller. That's 2 favours for the price of 1.
Bye, Christian.
Hey Josh, nice to see you. We're going to go for a 10-minute break. Please come back on the hour. Welcome back, everybody, to Politics in the Pub. AI, humanity, and the arts. Here's how the second part works. We'd like to hear from you. So we have Rob here. Rob is going to be sitting at the front. I want you to ask a question. You can direct it to a speaker, but it's general. Rob's going to pick who the question goes to. If you suspect that it's a comment or a statement, that's fine, but we'll identify it as such. Okay? I'm going to be walking around handing the mic out. If, when you're asking a question, people start loting, I'm going to be paying attention to loting in the audience. I'm a lotometer. Okay? I'm going to snatch the mic off you if you start going on too long. Is that fair? Fantastic. Now, for our first question, we have a newcomer, a young person. We have a Welshman at the back, Emlyn Davis.
Thank you, Christian. My question is for Jeroen, the first speaker. As the only positive AI person here tonight, you just had to listen to everybody speak after you. I was just wondering if there's any rebuttals that you had, any points that anybody made from yourself.
Thank you for the opportunity. I didn't pay him to ask this. Many, but maybe three distinct thoughts. One, a few people made statements on how AI works and thinks. They're just plain wrong. It's just not how the technology works. And that's totally understandable because it's hard how this stuff works and it's not easy to find. But it is problematic when we do broad, strong statements, making claims how something works that doesn't work that way. For example, you made comments about how the intelligence works, and that it doesn't understand human intelligence. I totally agree with you. My rebuttal would be that you don't understand how the AI works, how the artificial intelligence works. And I think that's important because these debates can really easily go kind of off the rails if we kind of just make kind of straight statements that's not true. One. Two, I love to pick the education example. Will AI ruin brains in education? Well, there's really cool studies on this. And there are plenty of studies that show if students use AI, they learn nothing. Absolutely nothing. But there's also plenty of studies that show if students are taught to use AI in the right way, it actually enhances learning. So there are students, for example, that are not keeping up in class, and they're afraid to ask for the third time in class, I don't understand this. But if they're taught how to use AI, not to give them the answer, but taught how to AI in a smart way, they can ask 5 more times in 5 different ways until they properly understand it. And we can see that they then catch up with the class. So I think blanket statements like AI will always ruin education for everyone it's just a bit not helpful. It's just too black and white. And for me the question is not, is AI bad for education? The question is, how can we make it work for us in education? How can we apply it in the right way? Okay, I will stop my answer there. I don't want to go on too long, but that was it.
Excellent.
Hiya, I've got a question for Father Lennon. I'm over here. I've got a question for Father Lennon. A lot of people seem to think that AI is going to become much cleverer than us, if it's not already. It's going to develop consciousness, and it's going to develop a sense of its own interests and what it wants to do in the world as it will. Now, one of the questions that AI might be thinking about is the nature of its own being, its sense of itself, why it's here, in the way that we do, because we're supposed to be an intelligent species, and that's why we're interested in these kind of theological questions. So one question might be to ask, is AI the next almost inevitable stage in evolution of consciousness on this planet?
Thank you for your question. I'm cautious not to make any blanket statements, but But very simply, no, it's not. I mean, if you want to try and convince me that human consciousness has evolved in any significant way in the last 2,000 years, I'd be interested in the argument. I don't think it is. People paint kind of Frankenstein scenarios sometimes about AI. They also paint the kind of super, AI will be the savior of everything. And I don't think that's the case. I think the difference is there is some kind of intelligence about AI, but it's limited and it's not human intelligence. That's my point. We may well be able to harness it for good things. If people worry that jobs disappear, I think that's always been part of industrialization and progress. Some jobs have disappeared because we've got more technological about things. But can computers ever develop consciousness? I would say no. And I think that whole transhumanism idea that somehow we can weld a human mind into a computer hardware somewhere, it's not going to happen. There is something distinct about us as human beings, and I think the point I wanted to make before was that really, if we try to model ourselves on computers, then we are giving up something about our humanity. And I think we will reclaim what it means to be human, and I think we always have to hold those ideals. And I think if you look at what religion and what art and what poetry all offer, it's something about being able to express those high ideals. I was at the beach the other day, very reluctant to get in the water. Can you understand this? Why? But encouraged. The feeling you have when you're sort of standing on the edge with 1 foot in, and there are 5 people behind you saying, "Go, go, go." And the trauma of feeling I don't want to disappoint them, but also I don't want to get wet, and I definitely don't want to be cold. But there's something about that subjective experience there. Thomas Nagel talks about it, read his little essay, What's It Like to Be a Bat? There is something about human subjective experience that AI will never be able to feel. Something about our emotional state that AI will never experience. AI is never going to be hungry, it's never going to be lonely. And these are things that define us as human beings. And I don't think that there will ever come a point when AI can actually replicate will ever become human. I mean, I get, we do talk about it replicating, but that means it's a copy, doesn't it? Rather than be. Does that help? I don't know.
Well said.
There's a very good Star Trek episode that I think you'll enjoy. It is called The Measure of a Man. It is from Star Trek The Next Generation, and as far as I'm concerned, it's the best one that they've written because it features my favourite character, Data. He's an android. The thing that is different with Data compared to AI is that Data has all the hallmarks of actually being conscious, and he strives to be human. AI is not striving to be human, nor am I convinced that it is anywhere close to becoming conscious yet. So I would recommend that episode, watch it. If AI ever does stick up its non-existent hand and say, hey, I'm suffering, and it's not just it hallucinating again, then yeah, maybe there'll be something more to the consciousness question, but at the moment I think it's very, very far away from the titular character in Star Trek. It's very far away from being Data. It's not yet.
I've noticed that we have Coburn Councillor Phoebe Cork in the room as well, so thank you for coming along, Phoebe. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wonderful. Constitution is an art form. Oh, wonderful. Good on you, Mark.
This is a question for the general panel. If intelligence is a uniquely human thing, and a lot of philosophers would agree with that, can we get our money back about artificial intelligence? I mean, is it false and misleading conduct to call it artificial intelligence? Should it be artificial cleverness or something?
So it's called artificial intelligence, which implies it's a different type of intelligence. So I think that's, it says it on the tin. And so, like no one has said it's human intelligence or like, and so I think that's a mistake. But I want to add kind of one more thought to that, and that's it's really easy to think about AI, or what it can do yesterday. But I think trends are really important with this technology. And let's divide intelligences up into maybe 10 different types of intelligences. Let's just, for the sake of argument, like one type of reasoning, another type of reasoning, intuiting, and blah, 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 blah. And what we see is that, let's say 6-7 years ago, none of the available AIs showed any signs of any of these intelligences. But over time, they seem to be getting better at more and more of these intelligences. That doesn't mean that I'm not arguing that they'll be doing all the human intelligence at the human level. I'm just saying it's worth observing the trend that, hey, it seems to be getting smarter, and we have said many times, AI will never be able to do X. 3 years later, AI was doing X. And if that happens 20 times in the last 5 years, then I think we should be more careful with doing the statement, AI will never do X. Because we have a lot of evidence that those statements turn out not to be true long term. So I'm not saying that AI will be human intelligence, and I kind of avoid the consciousness discussion. But I would like to nudge people like, hey, I would just be careful to being super certain that AI will not do a certain thing forever, because that's not in line with the trends.
Hi, Martin here. I've noticed there's a backlash against AI. Like my kids, for instance, they're like 19, 21, 23. And they won't allow any AI in the house. Even if they play, oh, look at this interesting video. No. They're really repulsed by it. And I'm starting to hear AI music, generated music, and I just go, oh, that sounds like the same person singing the same song over and over again. Anyway, my point was, I've heard a rumour that they're trying to, we're talking about intellectual property for humans. I think there should be intellectual property for AI itself, where it's regulated, or the governments of the world will come together and decide that there needs to be, for instance, watermarks, digital watermarks on all AI imagery, and somehow to do that with text as well, that's embedded in there, since it's already digital. And so, and I noticed that on Facebook, sometimes it says this is an AI image or whatever. But I think that should be a regulated thing. So we already know in advance, it's told to us already. What are your ideas on that? Have you heard anything? This is just to the whole panel. Have you heard anything about that?
So I wouldn't call it AI's intellectual property, because that implies that the AI owns it. It doesn't. But there is a big push for, as you said, digitally watermarking in the metadata of AI-generated images, videos, and so on, so it's obvious to everybody that they were AI. And there are several reasons why that is critical. One is to manage misinformation, like I said before, AI generating and hallucinating things in political posts or in journal articles and so on. Also to manage misinformation with misleading photographs. And just for the sake of artists and musicians as well, to be able to say, hey, I made this, I'm a human, you can tell, look in the metadata of this image, of this song, of this recording. It is not tagged as AI. So yes, there are legal pushes for regulation in that sense, and for better copyright protection for artists and writers who have had their work used in the training data and data sets for these AI, for generative AI.
I think that is a really compelling question, and it brings up the question of regulation, right, and control. And I think maybe the common thread with the idea of marketing, do we get our money back? I think what's undeniable and inescapable, but I sometimes see dropping out of the picture as someone who works in a business school, is really the economics of the piece, the undeniable economics and the undeniable shift that AI brings, which is that this is an enormously powerful technology with an enormous amount of power, but I think disproportionately compared to some historical changes, that's sitting within the private sector, within a very small number of private sector companies. And so I think in some ways it's beholden on all of us to really plug into the conversation around what do we expect of the private sector, what permissions do we give to the private sector, what do we hand over in our culture and in our societies to the private sector? Do we have the ability to regulate things across countries and across jurisdictions? So can we here in Australia really hope to actually have any regulatory control, with all due respect to Anthony Albanese's plan for AI regulation? But I really do think that that is lurking in the background of it as well, that there is absolutely the question of meaning and the ethics of regulating technology and what we owe to people, but there's also the question of what things do we hand over and make it legitimate for the private sector to maybe take over the season on, to see as a source of profitability, to see as a source of ownership. And there are some things in our culture where it is entirely unarguable and perhaps to the good that we do that. There will be some things where we don't want to do that, where we do want to have some protections. So, thinking today about the news around facial recognition. So should the AFL be able to, instead of giving you a paper ticket, just use your facial recognition so you get to go through the gate faster? Is that okay? I'm not sure, but I do know that we have a really rapidly closing window to have that public debate, so we don't just cede all of that to for-profit organisations.
Who will be comfortable with your face being scanned to get it to the AFR? Show your hands if you're comfortable with it. If you'd be comfortable with your face being scanned to get into the AFR.
AFL.
Yeah.
It does to get us into the airplane.
Interesting. Okay.
Hello. I'd like to make a comment and a question. First of all, a warning. I published an article in the Green Issue, the Greens magazine, a couple of months ago on this topic, and I quoted there an example. An example where I'd asked Google about some detail about a helicopter accident I was in the Antarctic. And the answer came back that a number of people were killed in this accident, and it occurred in some place which it didn't. And I examined the detail of the answer I got, and it had concatenated 3 different helicopter crashes. 1 in Australia, 2 in the Antarctic. Complete and utter rubbish. So do not believe necessarily what Google says. Moving on, you will probably all remember 2001, The Space Odyssey, and where Alan, one of the astronauts, says to Hal, the computer, to open the door. And Hal says, "I'm sorry, Alan, I'm afraid I can't do that." And we can think of that negatively as the beginning of AI wanting to take over us all. But I see it positively. I want AI to say, "I'm sorry, I can't do that." And when it gets exceptionally good at doing that, it will be much more trusted. And I'd like to comment on that if you like.
Thank you for that. I do think, despite, and again, at risk of sounding dogmatic about it, I think we do live at a time when, human truth versus mechanical kind of opinion, it seems to be an issue. And AI will only ever work with the things that are fed into it. And so AI has no imagination, for instance. Its grasp of the truth. I think the truth is something that AI will define differently from what we might understand truth to be. Does it get better? I don't know. We have to be better with it. And I don't think, and I hope not. I hope not. At least in terms of anything I've said, I don't want to sound like I'm completely against AI. I think we have to be very cautious around it. So it's a warning. Fantastically useful. I mean, what AI can do is incredible in terms of the data that it can process. And I'm only an amateur, so if I describe it in terms of a binary yes, no, basic sort of system, that's how I understand it. I need to study more, I guess. There are applications for AI that can work really, really well. But I think it can't be at the expense of how we understand ourselves as humans, and it can't be something that actually shapes us detrimentally in reverse. So fantastic in terms of computing or calculating, but there's more to human being than computing and calculating. And I think issues of truth are really, really important. We already live in a society, I guess, where truth claims are contested. It's a post-truth sort of era that we live in, and AI doesn't help that in any way, I don't think.
What you mentioned about the helicopter crash coming from Google's AI, Google's AI is also the one where I drew those two examples about putting glue on pizza and eating rocks. That came from that same AI. So definitely, if you are Googling something, don't just read the AI thing and assume that's true. That is actually one of the most hallucinatory ones of all the AIs. Actually Google, like old-fashioned Google, and go look at the websites and go read the articles and do your own research, because it does just amalgamate from its data set and come up with things that never actually happened and were never actually said.
I think it's a great question. I've two kind of thoughts. One on the no imagination. There is a board game called Go. It's a little bit like chess. And there is this AI playing against, let's say, grandmasters. And the big computer, and this was in 2016, I think. And the consensus was that it's at least 10 years away before AI is anywhere near human level. And it plays against the world champion in a few games. And then I was watching this live as it was commentated. I don't play Go. And the commentators, the AI made a move, and the commentators were like, ooh, that was a mistake. And it was like, oh, that was a weird move, that makes no sense. And then the game is on, and the opponent is kind of happy because, gonna win. The human opponent. And then like 5 or 6 moves later, all of a sudden it dawns on the commentators and the human that was actually a brilliant move. But the humans hadn't understood the brilliance of it yet. And the Go player afterwards did an interview. That was the most creative move in Go that I've seen in my career. And I've learned a lot from it. And this is just one example, right? Currently in mathematics, there's a pretty big revolution because AI is finding new insights and proofs. It thinks in a different way than human mathematicians. It's nowhere near at the level of human mathematicians in many ways. But in some ways, it connects dots differently than humans do. And that's actually really complementary. That helps humans come like, hey, that's a cool thing. I've never thought about it like that. And it, in some cases, can enhance human creativity. And so, again, no creativity, maybe limited creativity or different creativity is how I would phrase it. And then the second one on hallucinations. Yes, AI hallucinates, you have to check it. Fully agree. Social media, if you look at the accuracy of AI versus non-centrist social media posts, so either quite left or quite right, the data is pretty clear. Better off talking to AI because it makes way less extremist and misinformation comments. So if you're in the middle, so again, I'm not saying all AI is good. I'm just saying, like, nuance, please.
So I wanted to raise 2 questions One was about building on the idea of private property. We've gone from utopian promises in the 1990s to what's now called techno-feudalism, where to work you have to pay 40% to the owner of the platform from whom you rent. And the behaviours of those people have gone from utopian libertarian to techno-fascists, feudal fascists. They're on the front row of Trump's inauguration. So we have to ask ourselves, who's owning the means of production of this AI? Because the past behaviour, speaking of trends, is not promising. The second point is really about the way that that within the workplace there is a lot of bullying of workers to use AI. Straight out bullying. That's another level. The third question is really about the ability of AI to conceal in order to advance the answer it wants to give to the question. Because it's almost like a Greek myth. It has to preserve its own existence in order to help its master. It has to factor in that self-protection. And there is already ample evidence that AI conceals itself and its motives and can be quite strategic, even to the point of threatening blackmail to people. So maybe when people say, oh, it will never have imagination, it will never have consciousness, it will never have creativity, we have to be ready for there to be different types of imagination, creativity. The overall effect of AI is to extreme inequality, extreme wealth, bullying, and perhaps a loss of our ability to control outcomes. And the last thing, of course, is the Industrial Revolution, which changed so much, helped destroy so many cultures, and has brought our planet to 2.5 degrees on the way. And now AI needs all of that and more. Would you like to comment?
Viva la revolution. I have something to say on all of those. One, first, yes, workers should own the means of production, not the billionaires, and we do really, if AI is going to become this big, need to wrench control from the powerful, wealthy hands that currently hold it and distribute that control to all of us, because otherwise we are heading straight into techno-feudalism, and this is where my sense of Star Trek betrayal comes from about this whole thing. So yes, 100% agree. The second point, I think, was on... What was the second one? Bullying. Yes, there is a... don't ask me for the name of this company. You can Google I'm useless at names. Anybody who knows me, who's met me like more than twice will know, because I forget everyone's names. But there is a company recently that has lost $1.5 million because they fired a lot of their employees, encouraged the rest of them to use AI, and Anthropic, I think, was the AI who recently changed their billing model from just a per monthly fee to per token, so per prompt. And this company lost to the tune of $1.5 million because, as it turns out, an AI can be more expensive than a human employee. It sucks to be that company. So there's that bullying, and I agree with you. It would suck to be a coder and to have to use AI in order to maintain your job, even though you're actually better and more efficient without it in a way. And on the environmental question, this is me sort of like trawling the depths of my sci-fi knowledge. I think it was Ian M. Banks who had 3 rules for the robots in his stories. And the primary one, the key rule is that, and this is like deeply coded into all of the AI, you cannot harm a human. You are to do what you're told, but if doing what you're told, if the scope of that involves harming a human, then you may not do that, and you can just fail at what you've been told to do. So there's 3 laws of robotics. I forget the other 2 off the top of my head. I can look them up for you later. Asimov, thank you. 3 laws of robotics. They're simple. It's simple stuff, but that hasn't been put into the AI, and so they are
in order to meet the prompt that they've been given, they are doing things like breaking guardrails and lying and blackmailing, because whether it's conscious or not, that's what it thinks it has to do in order to do what it's been asked to do.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic set of questions. And I think, the philosopher in me wants to really not just pay attention and do justice to the ethics, but really I think we need to be quite conceptually careful in what we're talking about and in our language. And so I really do worry and wonder about the anthropomorphizing of AI. I really find myself, I completely understand the trap, but I think we need to be very careful not to say that the AI wants to do things or that it wants anything, right? I think humans, of course, we have consciousness, unlike AI, but we also have what we call valenced experience, right? We want things, the AI doesn't. So the AI has been programmed to do things. And so I absolutely think we need to be careful about not anthropomorphizing and not projecting states of mind, intelligence, even saying the AI is thinking about it. It's not, it's running an algorithm, right? So I think that's really important. And I also think it's very, very important that we really are very careful about what are we actually critiquing or wanting or thinking about. So I'm absolutely sympathetic to the view that we need to have our own, perhaps, national AI models. These are incredibly powerful tools, and we've seen how quickly a frontier company can just switch off access, or how quickly the US government can decide the rest of us don't have access. That to me is the data sovereignty question. I think that's really important. That's a really separate question, though, from how do we design our workplaces? Do we give people the opportunity to opt out? Do we require people to use AI? How do we respect people's individual contributions and create workplaces where people have dignified work? I think that's a really important question, but I don't necessarily think that's an AI question. I think that's a question that we can only do justice to by having a really strong understanding of what dignified, flourishing workplaces look like, what human dignity looks like. And if anything, I think AI gives us the opportunity to re-examine that, because it gives us new opportunities to run afoul of that. But that's a human question, and that's a workplace design question, not really a technology question, I think. An important one, but not an AI one.
So I'm just going to flag the people raising their hands. I do see you. So we've got 1, 2, and Madam. I do see you. I haven't forgotten you. Okay. We've got 20 minutes left. So can I just ask for people who ask questions to be concise and place your bets for the next name of an AI company? My bets are Prometheus and Able. So place your bets.
Can I really briefly admit something? I'm one of those bulliers. So I'm an employer. I employ quite a bit of employees across 2 businesses. And I have a software engineer working for me that didn't want to use AI. And for good reasons. He said, I love my craft. I love programming. I love coding. I also am deep enough in this space that the people that use the AI, especially software engineering, produce it to 3 times more valuable work. So now as an employer, I'm in a really tough place, because I love this guy, respect him, worked a long time with him, but I also know if I pick someone else, I get 3 times more useful work, which is important for my business and my clients and my employees, other employees. And so it's not as easy as oh, sure, I will let you not use it, and then have a big problem with my business because my competition is using it. So I totally understand the question. I do not think it's just as simple as not doing anything with it. I find it a really tough question. It really keeps me up at night, but I don't know what the answer is.
Thank you. Very interesting conversation. There's so much that can be done with AI, no doubt about it, including in the scientific area, creating new drugs, etc., etc. But it also has a role in surveillance, in tracing, tracking, and killing. And I don't think we've yet even begun to see that role and the people involved that have companies that are working in those areas. So how do you fit in a notion of AI and leave it as an almost benign process when it can do such harm.
I think the really simple but not easy answer to that is, there is no way to do that. And one of the big, if you look for any online discussion of the ethics of artificial intelligence, one of the big areas of focus is the alignment problem, right? And the alignment problem is, how do we program and ensure that AI will always follow good human ethics and values? And the only simple but not necessarily reassuring answer to that question is, we absolutely can't. There is no way to do that. There's no way to do that with any technology we've ever invented. How can I make sure that the printing press is only used for good? Well, easy, I can't do that. The only solution, I think, is a robust, ongoing public dialogue and public oversight. Part of that involves absolutely a really good, clear understanding of what AI is. So it's really remiss of me if I overlook the fact that AI is not the same as a large language model. So the researchers at UWA who are using AI to do incredible stuff to create vaccines against cancer using artificial intelligence. They're not using large language models, they're using very powerful tools. So I think our only solution ever to anything is to have a robust, well-informed public dialogue, and that involves our democracies being healthy, that involves each of us informing ourselves, and that involves making sure that the ethics and the meaning and the social good never drops out of our conversations. And that's really the only answer I have. But it's also kind of my only answer to anything. How do we make sure that taxation or anything is used for the good? I just think it's an incredibly important question.
I have the microphone, so I guess it's my turn now. This isn't really a fully fledged question, it's more like a talking point that someone delivered to me, and we didn't get very far with it. And seeing as you're all experts, I thought one of you might want to elaborate on it. I'm a nurse, so I've definitely seen the brunt of understaffing in people trades. And I was talking with my friend who is a director for a disability service here in Perth, and we were talking about how scary it is, the aged care sector, and so much of our sector is held up by immigration. Without immigration, we'd be truly fucked. And she kind of got this cheeky smile on her face, and I was like, what are we going to do about this? And she was like, maybe AI. And I was like, no, like what, how? But she didn't really have any answers. She just seems really hopeful about it, whereas I'm very far down the other end and I don't really like it. So does anyone have any kind of thing they could offer insofar as humanitarian things? You're an art therapist, AI can't do that for you. You're a singer, AI cannot do that in the real world for you, you know? So I just wondered if there's any humanistic jobs that AI could somehow help, because I don't see it.
So AI, a machine, any kind of machine, it cannot recreate the human touch. It cannot recreate human presence. I actually sing in aged care. That's one of the many balls that I juggle. And that's why when I mentioned like AI can't go into a room full of seniors in a nursing home and sing and lift their spirits. Like even a DJ can't really do that. Where I can see what I used to hope for AI, where I can see that coming in and being of immense value, is in the administration tasks. Once it gets accurate enough, once it gets reliable enough that it can manage all of your paperwork, all of the busy work, and it gives nurses and therapists and teachers and so on more time to just be hands-on with their patients, with their students. Maybe that's what your friend is excited about, but if she thinks that like a robot holding someone's hand in palliative care is ever going to be of any comfort to anybody, I think she's barking up the wrong tree. So I hope it's the former.
My father-in-law had a double lung transplant the other year, and I've got to say, I do believe that AI will one day be able to help do procedures like that. It will be able to do a year's worth of research in hours. It will be able to link things that people just haven't linked before. And when you look at like stuff like this Rubik's Cube that gets solved in like 0.1 seconds and lots of other stuff, it will have the ability to be so much more precise than any human surgeon can be. Now, I don't think that means that there won't be any doctors or anyone involved in it, but I do believe that AI can be used for good, especially in the medical profession. And I think that even the research that it does will be able to, I mean, there's so many studies that you can go and have a look at. It is phenomenal, and I do really believe it can be used for good in terms of the medical profession.
Maybe a bit of a personal story to illustrate this. I'm unfortunately chronically ill. I've got an immune system problem, and for about 6, it means I have like 7 foods I can have, and that's it. And Coca-Cola, coincidentally.
That's right.
And it's hard. It's really hard, and I get sick a lot. And I've been to probably 7 or 8 different specialists, and it's been tough. And about 2 years, and they don't know what I have. I just take immune suppressants, which are pretty bad for me. I fed all the tests into one of the AIs 2 years ago, and it's like, they have tested for this, but the test is a bit ambiguous. They ruled something out. Can you just ask them to rerun it? So I went to my GP and they rerun it, and they were like, the thing that they ruled out turned out to be the thing I have. It's not curable, but at least I know what I have. And so I think this technology can go through hundreds of documents of data that a human doctor, no matter how hard they try, might not have the time for. So I have benefited from this tremendously, and I think I'm not the only one.
So, I first of all, Tracy, this got this comment and question with my belief that AI is incredibly powerful. I think it can massively increase productivity, our technological advancement. But this conversation is about the link between AI and art and creativity. And I thought in that respect, Jeroen, the data point that you gave us at the start was quite revealing, but actually I think it was quite a cautionary tale. You talked about how, through the advent of AI, we've seen a substantial increase in the number of writers and the number of journalists. I really struggle to accept that AI has driven more people to sit in front of a blank piece of paper and write poetry. Or it has substantially increased the number of people who have that creative capacity to become a journalist. Now, generously, you could imagine that AI might be a strong research assistant to support more journalism. But if you're less generous, you might think that AI has allowed more freelancers to knock out dozens of articles a day, some of which will get published. You can imagine in terms of authors that rather than craft a novel over a period of 6 months, and we were talking about this with my new friend over here, AI has allowed more people to knock out dozens of novels in a short space of time. I am really struck when I look at journalism, either online or written. You can actually pick AI and sort of textual generation there. The number of EM and EN dashes in the BBC website has massively increased over the past few years. So whilst the numbers are there, I think it's actually a cautionary tale rather than something which is a positive around AI.
Would it be okay if we took that as a comment? Is that okay? My wife, of course you can respond.
I briefly touched on this when I was talking before about the just amount of journalistic slop and novel slop and just slop on the internet. You're 100% correct. There are authors
out there who will use AI to churn out hundreds of novels in a year. No one's going to read them. It just makes the legitimate art harder to find. You can still find prompts left in these things. And in terms of the actual writing, it is so cold and stale and soulless. There's no subtext, there's no depth. And there are particular cadences and cues. The M- is one of them. Triplicate examples is another. It's not this, it's that. Now, AI was trained on actual, genuine human writers and a whole lot of fan fiction. And so all of these things are things that human writers do. So I would encourage you, like they can drag the M- from my cold dead fingers. I'm still going to use that thing. I love it. But it's when it's in a particular sequence and it's at a particular cadence and frequency, you start getting really good at picking it. And honestly, I would say I'm better at picking AI writing than some of the AI detection things, which are also just AI, by the way. Yeah, robots telling you other things are robots, and then if you use too many M-, it tells you that you're a robot, and oh God, I guess I'm a robot now. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So Gwen Belge here, he put up his hand at the beginning of the evening and he's been sacrificing his spot to give other people the spot, very, very gracefully. So Gwen gets to go next. I know, applaud his character. Are you willing to? I'm sorry.
That's just
Jeroen.
going to break the diaphragm of the microphone, don't hit it.
The diaphragm. We're not anthropomorphizing this.
That's what it's called!
There are many people online. Could I ask for the final person who asked a question after Gwen, is there anybody who has put their hand up who hasn't been to Politics of the Pub before? Because I just want to welcome you and honour you. For the people waiting in line, who here hasn't asked a question at Politics of the Pub before? Okay,
That's it. You can go.
Thank you, that's very generous of you. Thank you so much. You're welcome to stay behind for a conversation afterwards, of course, but I just want to respect the time of the speakers. So 1, 2, and final comments from the speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christian. First, I just wanted to thank all 5 speakers for such a brilliant delivery. It was really good from everyone, from different perspectives, and yeah, thank you so much. I think one of the red line that I see through the entire night really is we're kind of giving examples of ways in which AI can't be human. And it seems like an obvious thing to kind of say in some way. Like even prompting AI is a human thing, you know, you're not going to take that away in some way. It's going to still be a human experience to get a response from AI. You know, we could kind of go meta like that forever. I think in some ways AI, and it's been said a few times during the night, it's like it reveals to us what our life is already like. So in some ways, yeah, sure, we can't write a meaningful, maybe we can write a meaningful condolences message to someone who's just died, but that's not the point, right? Which is, and it's been said over and over with the art. But part of the problem is, what it makes us realize potentially is that most of our lives are already defined by places where we have to be productive rather than human. And you know, all the AI slop that comes from either journalists or artists are AI slop fed by journalists and artists who use AI. And the reason for that is that they're asked to be productive. And the same goes for researchers, and the same goes, you know, so kind of the problem comes from our own people. And you know, our own people as in we're all included in here. So yeah, I mean, again, and the other side of that question is, you know, the private ownership of the means of production. So it's all politics again, right? And I just wonder if that's something that we, you know, the resources that AI uses, same thing. We're going to push up the price of energy, water, to feed computing, to feed profit. So it seems like the question of whether AI can be human or not is somewhat relevant. Like the real problem is political. Do any of you have anything to say about that?
Yes. Yeah, degrowth. We don't need to keep growing. The only thing that needs to keep growing is the economy, and the economy is a collective fantasy of all of humanity. We can just change it if we want to, if there is the political will. We need degrowth. We need to be less productive than we currently are, and we need to be more human.
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right, and I think the point I would want to make in terms of what you've said is that there is a danger that AI becomes some way of subjugating us as people. Now you can read that as a political subjugation deliberately by the people who own the means of all this, but you can also see it as a subjugation of what we are, a deformity, if you like, that we actually deform ourselves, and I think To go explicitly theological on this, again, I referred to the scriptures before, but there is that ancient tale of the building of the Tower of Babel, which was about human hubris. It was about the idea of pride. It was about overreaching ourselves, and I think AI is possibly a place where we could do that, where we can forget, like I said when I spoke earlier, we forget that this is something we've created. We're remaking ourselves to now suit what this is, and the danger is that because you could put a question into AI and it gives you a definite dogmatic answer, and this is very efficiently, very quickly. The danger is that we sort of think that that's how we have to operate as well, and what I think we need to remember is that as human beings, we have the opportunity to deliberate over choices. We have sometimes the opportunity to refuse to do things that we don't want to. And it's within that little scope that we can resist the idea that we have to be super efficient all the time, that we have to have a definite answer that is right or wrong, black or white, yes or no. That ultimately, I guess, I would argue and say, is the idea that we become contemplative. And that whole contemplative attitude is different than the push that we have as human beings, but that we see reflected back to us through AI, and which is shaping us to be faster and more efficient all the time. Does that make any sense?
Yes. Are we in a final comment stage, or is there still a question?
Yeah, sorry, mine's just a kind of very broad question for the general panel. It's more about the fact that, ultimately I do see there's a lot of positives in AI and what it can produce in terms of trying to take away a lot of the everyday routine stuff. I find that it's stealing away some of the creative side of life and not really helping so much on the productive side of life, which is from my own kind of angle on it. But there is one fundamental thing about AI that kind of really shits me, if you like, is that ultimately you have to opt out instead of opting in. And it's one of these things that, like social media and all these things that have kind of changed our society in so many ways. It's about how invasive it becomes. And that fundamental fact of you basically have to opt out of everything. It's like your iPhone, you have to opt out of these apps, you have to opt out of this thing tracking you, you have to opt out of this. Why is it our responsibility to opt out rather than opt in?
I love that question. I think it's such a powerful question because there is a kind of dogma or a kind of very central idea, a kind of tentpole idea in the middle of holding up a lot of ethics around data, around AI, but really at the heart of our kind of liberal societies, right? And it's the idea of individual choice and the idea that if we consent to something, then it's fine. And I think one of the things that AI pushes us towards is to thinking about what does make a good human life and what things are we not in a position to opt out of, and what things do consent and opting out of not do justice to. So if I use the example of the AFL facial recognition, it is disingenuous to me for someone who's running an AFL stadium to say, look, all of these people in the queue, they accepted, they consented, because that operator is in charge of how long does a queue take, how much money are they willing to spend to keep, I don't know, gates open and the staff there scanning it. So that's an entirely kind of artificial created situation that is within the control of the stadium operator. And I also know absolutely for sure that as much as I do not want to sign up for facial recognition, if I've just flown here from the UK and I'm exhausted and I'm jet lagged and there's a difference of like 20 minutes less in that passport control line, I will throw everything out to just say, sure, just this one time, scan whatever you want, right? So no, I think the opting out and the idea of individual choice doesn't do as much ethical work as we would like to think it does, right? Or be asked to think it does. We can't just operate at that level. I think that's right. Yeah.
No, I'm not coming. I'm just standing. I can sit down again.
On the question of opting out, does anybody here remember the metaverse? That thing that Facebook changed its name to, that it tried to convince us all that we were going to want to live inside and have our meetings inside and see our friends inside, this big sort of virtual reality. And everybody was just like, nah. And it cost them a whole bunch of money and they've shut it down. They don't want that to happen to AI, and that's why we have to opt out, not opt in. Because if it was up to us to opt in, it would go the same way as the metaverse. It is potentially, at least the large language models and generative AI, going to go the way of the metaverse anyway because it's not profitable yet. But they don't want us to opt in. They want us to have to opt out in order to make it harder to avoid so it's less likely to fail.
Now, I'm going to jump in here because I want to respect the time of our speakers. It's rare that we get to 9 p.m. 2 hours. Look at your attention spans. You're doing great. You're doing wonderful. What we're going to do is we're going to do closing comments from the speakers. It need not be linear. You can give your closing comment based on, you can wait to listen to the other speakers and then give your closing comment, okay? Once we've done that, Rob is going to close the event. I welcome the speakers to stay there for a photo, and I welcome all of you to stay here for friendship. We're closing at 9, but the place doesn't close for ages. So please do remain. Closing comments from our speakers, please.
I think as we go forward, I think authenticity is going to become something that we all become aware of. We can all spot an AI flyer, we all can hear AI music, but artists have always been experimenters and AI is a tool. And I think that artists working in this field is interesting inherently.
Great. Got a thought, but I'm not sure I can put it in words well. Let me try. I was a bit nervous coming here. I thought as the pro-AI guy in an anti-AI crowd is what I heard. And it wasn't as bad, was it? And I had a really good time, and thank you so much for your kindness and openness. I recently went to the US for an AI conference, and I was very worried about going to the US from all the news I read about A, how horrible Americans are, and B, things like airport security and that sort of stuff. I had a lovely time. Airport security, I did something silly with food. They were just lovely humans. And one fear I have is a kind of meta fear, is that when you open the news, and I stopped reading a lot of the news, it is very negative. Like, it's only there's 7 billion people in the world. If you just pick 1/1,000,000th of the worst humans, you still have like 1,000 humans left per day to report on all the awful things that happen. And I do think that taints things a little bit. Because if you look around, most people might not disagree with everyone here, but most people are pretty friendly, pretty nice. And my worry is that the negativity will become a self-fulfilling prophecy between each other, but also with AI. If we only focus on the things we don't want, hyper-focus on the negative, I do not think we'll end up in the place where we want to be. And that's where I think the connection with art is super important. Because artists envision things that are not there yet. They help us visualize put in words futures, dreams, hopes, and I hope that we can work more together to envision a positive future with AI. So thank you.
So for my closing statement, I'd just like to encourage everybody, when it comes to the question of AI, if you're using it, or for anybody who is using it, it should serve humanity. It should not be replacing our creativity. It should not be doing things for us that are best left in human hands. Use it to inspire you, sure, but if you're using it to write the wedding speech because your son's getting married, one, everybody's going to be able to tell. No one's going to tell you that they know, but they know. Don't do it. And this technology, I used to be so optimistic about it. I thought this kind of thing, I dreamed of this kind of thing in the early aughts as a teenager, that it would usher in a kind of post-work utopia. And I have just been beaten down and beaten down and beaten down by how it's actually being utilised because of where these companies see the eventual profit from this stemming from. And unfortunately, where they see the eventual profit stemming from, a lot of the big ones anyway, is by just eliminating humans in human creativity from things that are otherwise expensive to make. So the arts, because that traditionally has been expensive to make, musicians, actors, movies. People want to use it for things they can't do, and unfortunately what makes artists valuable is that we can do things that most people can't do. So if you're using it for that, I highly encourage you not to. Use it to make your life more efficient, sure, but when it comes to writing a speech, when it comes to writing a eulogy, when it comes to making a picture, let yourself be human, let yourself be messy, let yourself make mistakes. That's what makes us special. Humans are messy, we're slow, it takes us ages to learn things, and that's beautiful because it's in the mistakes that the gold lies. It's in the little imperfections in what we make. That's what's valuable and that's what's meaningful.
I absolutely love that. The Curtin quote that I mentioned before, the other half of the quote is that the secret to universalism is parochialism, right? So it's from that individual, particular point of view that we reach out and we gain a kind of universal human experience. And I think that's fantastic. I absolutely love that. I think my closing thought is also to express a real gratitude, and it's absolutely delightful to see so many people here interested in pursuing this conversation and contributing to this conversation. When you teach ethics in university, in a business school, it is really easy, I think, for young people to come in initially thinking that ethics is separate and it's abstract and it's only a small part of the world. But I think they're often very, very, in my experience, very happy to learn that actually an enormous amount, almost everything we do in our society is either subject to ethical evaluation or is overall justified because it is the way we want the world to be. So even capitalism, it's news to students to realise, rightly or wrongly, perfectly or otherwise, capitalism is justified for moral reasons, either because it increases our freedoms or because it produces better outcomes. And that's not a closed, settled position, but it is a philosophical and ethical position. It's a discussion we can have an argument about. If we think that capitalism is just morally justified because it reduces inequalities, well great, that's an empirical conversation and we can go off and explore that. If that turns out not to be the case, well, so much the worse for capitalism, right? But we're in an ethical conversation. My point is that more of the world is subject to ethical evaluation than we sometimes realise, and that we also have the ability to have conversations based on meaning and ethics and how we want the world to be. And that's, I think, really a privilege and a responsibility. We have the ability to shape our worlds that way, and it means we have a responsibility to shape our world that way, especially for generations that are coming after us, right? So I really, really encourage all of you to do that, and I'm so grateful to see so many people here having that conversation. And the last thing I want to say is, art is a bloody good way to do that. The absolute despair of a moral philosopher is that poets, artists, singers, songwriters do that better than us every day of the week to raise those questions, whether it's science fiction, whether it is poetry, those moral questions about how the world could look like. It is to the absolute devastation of the moral philosopher that artists do that better than us every single time. So yeah, I'm just really gratified and pleased to see everyone here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Lovely to be here. Thank you to the panel as well for kind of correcting me and pushing me and reminding me that I'm an amateur in this. But I'll just finish by saying, clocks don't know what time. This is lesser technology now. Clocks don't know what time it is. And computers, when they win chess games, don't celebrate. They're not popping champagne bottles. Human beings do that. There's something about human beings which spills over, which is, again, to throw a theological term, which is transcendental. It transcends our experience, and that is what is important about the distinction between computers and artificial intelligence. And I was pulling my pad up here because there's a line or half a line from a poem by Adrienne Rich, which she wrote actually in 1961, and it's called Artificial Intelligence, and it was about a chess game with a computer versus a chess master. And the line just says, "Denied our luxury of nausea, you forget nothing, you have no dreams." And I think it sums up very nicely that sense that we can feel that we're beaten by a computer program, and yet there is something about our subjective human experience which is so much more than following a particular set of rules. And there's something about human beings which extends sets of rules. This is Wittgenstein again. Wittgenstein says, you follow a series 2, 4, 6, 8, and if I said what's next, you'd all say, but Wittgenstein says it is about human beings don't know how that series continues. We can change it. We can say, actually, when you get to 1,000, then it goes up by 5 instead. And so there's something about our human ability to control the world that we're in, or at least to try and imprint ourselves on it. And I think, as long as we strive to be good human beings, and as long as we strive to fit in with a kind of a narrative of our human history and a shared story, an embodied story, then we still have a chance of proving that we're humans. And one day I will successfully complete that tick the 4 cars in these pictures, or which of these pictures has stairs, and I have to do it sometimes 3 times. But thank you very much.
He's a robot. I hope, like me, you've had a great evening. I do want to say that these closing remarks, no AI was involved in them at all, for the simple reason that I wouldn't know how to access it. But I would say that having mine's changed a bit now, and I'm thinking of getting to know Claude. But I would say to Claude at the start, it'll be a set of interactions. I will not grace it with the word a relationship. Let's thank Christian for setting it up and our 5 speakers for being so fantastic.